Paco Seirul.lo, in my opinion, he's one of the most important people in the development of the game throughout the recent years. Football played from the situational game perspective, to which he refers as our game, is not a succession of plays, but a stochastic succession of phase spaces.
Care to try it?
Stochastic. That's a big word, but this is not about using big words. It's about using the most adequate word to communicate an idea or concept. So let's see what stochastic means. Stochastic. Having a random probability distribution or pattern that may be analyzed statistically but may not be predicted precisely. Yeah, I know, that's not very helpful. So I've decided to ask a mathematician about this concept, and she said that, and I quote, "In every step of a stochastic succession, there's a cloud of probabilities that are defined in the previous step. The term aleatory applies on random events, which is not the case of football. Football is not entirely random, nor entirely determinist. It is stochastic." Let's freeze the image for a second in this phase space. We're gonna call it phase space T0. In phase space T0, a team will dispose of the ball in a given space with a given organization. Now we'll freeze the image again and we'll call that phase space T1. Now we have a different organization which is related to the existing organization in T0. Therefore, as Seirul.lo proposes, and as you can see, we can identify a succession of phase spaces occurring in the game. There are no isolated plays. Each one of these phase spaces can be what it is because it's being configured by the previous phase spaces and by the way in which we organize while trying to anticipate and configure future phase spaces. As you may recall, we discriminate three different levels of intervention for the players in each phase space, which we call the intervention curves. We have the intervention space, then we have the mutual help space, and finally we have the cooperation space. Let's go quickly over a few characteristics of each one of these intervention curves. About the intervention and mutual help spaces, we can say that they're unrepeatable, as they are not two exactly the same. We find an elevated degree of intersystemic interaction and very few reflexive time. This brings outstanding levels of uncertainty in the spaces near the ball. Therefore, players in these spaces have a very high demand for autonomy, creativity, and intuition. Altogether, it makes the influence of the coach in these spaces to be extremely low. With regards to the cooperation spaces, we can say that they're also unrepeatable. There's also high levels of intersystemic interaction as there are many players involved. However, players in cooperation spaces have more reflexive time than the players in the intervention and mutual help spaces. Therefore, the level of uncertainty associated to the game for these players is lower. There's still a high demand of autonomy in these spaces, but the requirements for creativity and intuition decrease dramatically, and this is related to having available more reflexive time. For this reason and other reasons that we are not going to address right now, so we can keep this video as brief as possible, the influence of the coach over players in cooperation spaces is higher than the influence over players in the intervention and mutual help spaces. In this sequence, you can find highlighted not only some of the phase spaces that are being configured, but also the roles that the players take. As we mentioned in our meeting, these roles are very dynamic, as they are constantly being modified by the movement of the ball, which redefines the configuration of each phase space.